Okay, I think we're all set. So, welcome everybody, and welcome Marilyn, my special guest. I'm so
Thank
excited.
you. Thank you.
Oh, goodness. So, Marilyn and I have known each other for many, many years. Um, I think I met you in Corte Madera at what class was that with Gary? Do you
You
remember?
in the first body class? That was 2006. That was it. My goodness, we go a long ways back.
Yes, that body
Oh,
class. That was
sorry.
amazing.
That tells me we're on.
Yeah. So, what actually brought you to Access Consciousness? Just
That's a,
curious.
that's a kind of a funny story. I'm one of those people who has always been a seeker. I did it all, metaphysics, tried Wiccan. Yeah, that didn't last very long. It seemed kind of silly. But astrology and all of those kinds of things. And yeah, nothing was kind of great. I therapy. And I had a friend. Oh, I know. She originally introduced me to Rajneesh in India, and I went to India in my late 20s. That was okay too. I got some good stuff out of it. And one thing I want to do is encourage people to seek. Don't give up, really. Be persistent, be tenacious. This is an aside, but it really paid off for me a few days ago, this tenacity I had. Um, because eventually, if you truly desire something, you'll get it, you'll find it, you'll create it. But
That's so
anyway,
true.
the same woman who's no longer in Access gave me, are you ready, cassette tapes to listen to?
I remember.
Remember on your Walkman or whatever it was. So I was taking a walk, and I knew in those days, everything was shared because Access was tiny or quite small. So I was taking a walk one day, and I knew Gary's voice, and I wasn't listening to a tape that day. And I just heard this, time to come to Access. I'm like, what? What? Time to come to Access. I'm like, you don't even know me. And he's like, yes, I do. Time to come to Access. So then I went back to my friend and I said, I need to go meet Gary. We were having lunch. She said, you haven't even done Bars Foundation, which was together. And I said, I don't care. She said, well, and then she said, you know what? The first body class is in 3 weeks in California. I'm like, I'm going, put it on my credit card. So that's how I got there. And I never looked back.
Oh my goodness. And I remember that was the first body class they did, and there were no prerequisites.
Exactly. That's
So
how
you
I
could
got in.
go.
There were no
Because now you can't do that.
You can't do that
You
anymore.
like slipped underneath the
I
fence.
did, definitely.
Wow. Yeah. You know what's so funny is like back in those early days, I think I met Gary in 2004, and he did a couple of intros before he was doing an advanced class in the area. And I had found out about the tools through my chiropractor, who had him a little bit twisted, and to make
Right,
him the guru.
right.
And he's like, "Oh, Gary's coming to town with Dane," and they did this intro, and I sat there. I was like, "Oh my God, this is," but I found it through this other twisted way, but I was like, this, and I just knew it, even though it was weird and they had like a whole paragraph for a sentence, question
I
clearing.
remember the old clearing statement.
It was just like, wow, the energy of it was so much what I
Yeah.
knew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. It's the energy of these things. Because when I look back, my first foundation class was my facilitators were pretty bad. They'd read the book and they were fighting with each other and who got credit for this client. But the tools and the energy of it. And that was one of my first awarenesses. Don't go with the people. Don't take anything personally. Don't
Mhm.
make them the reason that you choose or don't choose. Go with the energy, go with the material, go with what you know to be true for you. So that was a great kind of lesson for me very early on, and it served me so well. And of course, it's access,
Mhm.
empowering you to know that don't Don't believe anybody else. Don't make them greater than you or make them the source of the truth or anything. So yeah, I mean, that's been really important for me.
Cool. Yeah. And then I know you created the right recovery for you from that conversation that you had at the 7 day with Gary. And I remember that too. I remember
Yeah.
seeing you guys go to lunch and have this conversation. It's so cool to witness like the seed that gets
Yes.
planted and then the
Yes.
tree that grows.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because I'd been diagnosed as an alcoholic and I went through all the traditional treatment stuff and all the time going, something's not right about this. And then my therapist at the time said, because I was getting a divorce and wasn't sure what I was going to do, he said, I think you'd be a good therapist. I'm like, really? So he pulled strings. I mean, it's amazing how the universe works. He pulled strings to get me in after the application date was passed.
Mm,
I went on to get a clinical social work degree, especially in addiction, worked at a psych hospital, worked for a psychiatrist for a while, and then did private practice. And that was, how many years? But before I was in Access, definitely before I was in Access.
mm.
My sense of time is kind of out the
I
window.
know it's
It's
all.
way crazy. But anyhow, the whole time I'm going, there's got to be something else. There's got to be something else. And then I started Access and I didn't start it for turning it into anything. I just started it because I was so drawn to it. I was like, wow, like you said, OMG.
Mhm.
However, I started using the Access tools in my private practice with all my clients. And it was a very natural flow because I was never one of those sit back, be quiet, give the answer kind of people. People would walk into my office and go, I'm depressed or I'm an alcoholic. And I'm like, well, how do you know? Who told you that? All that kind of thing.
I love that.
Yeah, it was just always putting it back on them and more in the question than I'd ever been before. And slipping in those basic tools, like, well, who could that belong to? Where'd you buy that one from? And,
Mm,
that kind of thing. And what was happening was that my clients were getting better faster. And I'm like,
mm,
wait a minute, because I went to I went to the Menninger Clinic for my internship, which is like what the Mayo Clinic is to bodies. The Menninger Clinic, I mean, Kernberg came out of there, the borderline thing came out of there. So I had really top-notch training, but it couldn't stand up at all to the using the Access tools. So that's when I approached Gary. I'm like, Gary, and at that point there was one other right. It was the right body for you. And I said, I'd like to do this. I'd like to apply I'd like to start a program with the Access tools and addiction. And I'd like to call it Right Recovery. He said, sure. And then he said, I think I'll do a bunch of right classes, and
mhm.
that all got started. But it has just been tremendous for me. I mean, and so the freedom you get from being allowed, really, in an organization to create whatever you desire to create, as long as it doesn't disempower or have any violence or anything, go for it. And that's what I did. And then he bugged me and bugged me and bugged me till I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy with
He's
that.
good at that, like needling,
Yes,
bugging
he
you.
is good at that.
Made me write the book too. And then he came out with a similar topic book, and I was like, but they're so different.
Yes.
He wrote Divorceless Relationship, which
Yes.
is like, it's like the dictionary.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
so
exactly.
dense. And mine's like this little cute
And yours
section.
was, Gary's maybe too, but yours was really based on experience and asking questions. And
Yes. And I remember I called you during that whole period. I called you once or twice,
yeah,
and
that was
you
fun.
you were just such a nice space of calm in the storm of going through a breakup.
Thank you.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you for that.
You're very welcome.
You can get like you can get blown by the storm, but you're still you. And
Yes.
forget that.
Yes.
It's nice to be able to reach out to somebody.
Yeah. Well, and what you said is so critical. You can be blown by the storm, but you're still you. People tend to lose themselves in divorces, in trauma drama. And all of a sudden, I used to refer to it as you are you. And then all of a sudden, you're a beach ball in the middle of an ocean storm bouncing around. So critical to keep you and not to make, you might have to ride out a few waves, but if you choose, you can ride out anything and you can
Yeah.
emerge. Hello, I'm good. I'm still me.
Yeah. And I think probably the most um, destabilizing part
Mhm.
of it is that you're not you by the end of the relationship. You're so not you that you've
Yes.
lost you. And
Yes.
then you lose this thing that you thought was you. And so you think
Yes.
everything's falling apart. But that's when you find you. So,
Yes. You might want to expand on that a little bit. I think the audience is probably going, what's she talking about?
yeah, that was a bit deep. I'm talking to the people 300 years into the future who gets
Yes.
it. But yeah, when like how much do you divorce yourself to be in the relationship and
Yes.
the two become one?
Yes.
Where did the rest of you go?
And
you
where
know,
did the rest of him or her go?
yeah. And it's like you forget all those things. And I remember through the process, through bars, through all these things, I started gaining more of myself and I started realizing that the relationship didn't work. If I
Right.
was going to continue to be me, that relationship won't work.
Right.
So, it's actually kinder to leave than to stay.
Yes.
And the cool thing is that we both were in access, so we both got it and we were really upfront about it and kind about it uh,
Nice.
until later on. But
Until later on, right? I
that's
remember the
okay
on,
because
but
you know what? I realized I have patience and it took like 14 years, but now we're finally at a place where
oh,
he can
good.
communicate with me. Yeah.
Good. Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'd like to say we tend to think of relationships just about what you're talking about, a marriage, a partnership. Like just this past week, I realized that someone I had as a quote friend for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years was not really a friend.
Mm,
And I had misidentified, misapplied what caring was.
mm,
That if I cared for her, I would overlook everything. If I cared for her, I would shut off my awareness of some really nasty, mean things. If I cared for her, I would not allow myself to be aware of totally she did superiority over me, access everything. And I was like, wow, wow, okay.
yeah.
And that's what, we get caught up in what being nice and what caring means, and it cuts off all our awareness. And
It's
it
so
can be
true.
any relationship.
I had a similar experience to that a long time ago in Access, and I mentioned it to Gary, and I was like, "Oh my God, like I feel so awful,
Mhm.
used, taken advantage of all this." And he said that's why friendship is a distractor implant. And I'm like, "What?"
Wow.
He said it distracts you from being aware
Yes.
of everything about the person because you like, oh, but I like them and they're my friend, and
Yeah.
so you cut off your awareness to the things that they're actually doing.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I'm looking at applying that to every area of my life, including myself. What am
Yeah.
I avoiding being aware of about myself? Oh, sometimes I'm a real jerk. Well, that's kind of fun.
Well, and like I imagine that the more you're willing to see all that in you, then you can see it in other people easier.
Absolutely. That whole self-awareness thing. And this Gary wrote this book, I guess it was last year, called The Gift of Allowance. It's an amazing book. But once you really have allowance for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have allowance for yourself, you can't really be aware of what of you.
Mm-hmm.
you justify anytime you're a total jerk, or you compliment yourself on being such a nice person and don't look at the anger underneath or whatever. But the more you have allowance for yourself, the more you have interesting point of view for yourself, it's so much easier than to be aware of what's going on with other people without judging them, because that's what cuts off our awareness. We judge them as great, we judge them as crappy, we don't want them around, but maybe there's something there that we can contribute to each other. So that's a lot of what I've been looking at recently, is just allowance of self, allowance of others, but not allowance as this reality is I'm a doormat, going to excuse everything you do. Allowance for your choice to be superior, but doesn't mean I need to be around you. Allowance for your gaslighting. But you know what? Either I'm going to gaslight you back or leave.
Yeah. Like having allowance for having a negative awareness and not thinking that it's a judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. So, and that shows up a lot in mental health stuff. It shows up in addiction. I used to ask my clients who came in saying they were an alcoholic, and addiction is much bigger than most people think. It's really an energy looking for a target that you can latch on to that takes you away from yourself. So you can be addicted to trauma drama. You can be addicted to being right or wrong, or polarity, being a great mom, being the healthiest person in your exercise class. You can be addicted to anything. But I would always ask them, what's right about your addiction that you're not getting? And they're like, what? It's terrible. It's horrible, particularly if it was alcohol or food or drugs, making lots of money or being the best athlete, which you can desire to be a great athlete, but that is out creating yourself, But anyway, we would go through stuff and it would be like, well, my marriage is falling apart and it's the only way I seem to know how to relax, and my kids are acting out. I'm like, well, what if we looked at some other possibilities for those things and just drink responsibly for now, or whatever. I never told anybody they had to quit. Although if people were doing drugs, I'm like, pick a different addiction. This one can cost you a lot of money, land you in jail, and a lot of legal fees. So, but there was never a sense of you're bad or wrong or anything like that. In fact, after doing right recovery for a few years, I realized that the primary addiction is actually to judgment and the wrongness of self. And that's the pain that leads people to have a desire to kind of get outside of themselves, to not exist for a little while. You can be addicted to running. You can be addicted to always being the perfect student. Oh, I'll just study more. That's what I'll do.
So somehow some sense of control of something.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that's amazing. What would it take for everybody in the world to know that exists, even just in the realm of psychology?
Yeah.
Can we get it into universities and stuff?
I don't have an answer for you, but there was something kind of light about that.
Yeah, because I was a psychology major. Well, I double majored art and psychology, and they didn't have anything like that. And the more classes I took, I thought, this is bullshit. Like, I don't even want to do that at all. I did want to learn like what made people happy and what would it take for people to be happy. And so I was like combining the art with that. And I guess
but you bring up a really good point. Like in psychology, in this reality, like the question is, well, what would it take for you to be happy? The answers, or the awareness, is never choice. It's always an external thing.
Right.
That's why none of it ever works. Oh yeah, I'll be happy when I'm married and have a child. I'll be happy when I have $50,000 in the bank. I'll be happy when I can run a 5-minute mile. I'll be happy. That's not going to make anybody happy. You'll be happy when you choose to be happy.
Mhm.
And that's really all it is.
It's
Your
so
point of
amazing
view
that it's that
creates your
simple.
reality. Yeah, it's that
And
simple. Your
then
point of
and
view
then it's
creates
like,
your
well,
reality.
happiness, that's just frivolous.
Yes, exactly. If you're serious, you don't have to be happy. If you make it significant, you don't have to be happy.
Yeah. No, thanks. I think I'll choose happy.
Just be happy. I grew up in an parents' academic city town. My dad was a professor. Happiness wasn't, yeah, it was never talked about. It was serious and intellectual and, all that kind of stuff. Pride in, we weren't poor like people are poor in the ghetto, but we didn't. I mean, an associate professor makes almost nothing, but we were doing the right thing because we were furthering science and
Right.
that stuff.
It's true. I bought into all of that coming from the East Coast,
Yes,
Boston.
yes,
It's
yes,
very, what
absolutely.
college did you go to? It has to
Yes,
be Ivy League. Yeah.
yes, yes, absolutely. Just crazy, stupid stuff.
And yeah, it's funny. As much as my parents tried to like curb me into a different direction, like when I was little and learning how to draw, um, I would draw with my left hand and my mom would put a crayon in my right hand and I would draw with both. Like I
Oh,
didn't I
yeah,
didn't swerve over to what they wanted. And same thing, like sure I went to this school and I took all that academic stuff, but I was always in the art direction. And soon after I quit my job and I created my own business, and like the universe just pushed me that way, and that the doors open, so I chose it and it worked for me. But it was not what they
no,
saw as something that you could succeed at.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, and that's it. The universe will gently push us because I know, no, no, I'm going to do what's expected of me. I'm going to become an engineer or whatever it is. Or you can go, oh, wow, yeah, look at this door opening. I think I
Right.
want that. What else is possible?
Sometimes it just becomes too hard to go in the wrong direction and you have to
Yes.
turn around.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's when you get out of a job. That's when you get out of a marriage or, I mean, and maybe it worked for a month or two or 5 years or whatever.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
people want things to work forever. They want it decided. Okay,
Mhm.
this is my career. Okay, this is my partner for life. Okay, this is where I'm going to live for life. Well, that's not really being aware of changes and possibilities and new directions. And I
Mhm.
always tell my clients, do one thing different every day.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what it is, just take a different route to work or on your walk or your run, or go to a different restaurant or read a different kind of book or play with your kids or your cats in a different way. But do one thing different every day because it makes you be present.
Mhm.
And it's kind of fun. What can I be and do different today?
True. You could brush your teeth from the opposite side first.
You could, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
well,
Well, cool. I'm going to try something different today too.
excellent.
I
Excellent.
feel like I do different things every day, but
You may. Some
you can
people just
add
do.
more,
Yeah, yeah, you can
you
always
know,
do more.
because, if you're a creative person, you're going to naturally do stuff, but it's like never creative enough.
Right, exactly.
I
Exactly.
want more.
I need to. I'll have more, please.
Yeah. Well, awesome. As we're winding up, is there anything that you have coming up that you'd like to share with people?
Well, I have one of my favorite new things that I'm doing, and you can check out my website, marilynbradford.com. But I have a membership called What's Family Got to Do with It?
Mm.
And part of that is because, I mean, having been a psychotherapist for over 36 years and then doing access and, facilitating, it just seems like family permeates almost everything in our lives. Our attitudes about money, our attitudes about roles and men and women, our attitudes about, and we think, oh, yeah, I did my work on family. Probably not. So each month we pick a different topic. And like family and bodies, family and money, families and parenting. We did that. It was really interesting. I think this month is something like, were you the weird one in your family? Because generally speaking, you probably were if you're in this membership. But
True.
that's one of my favorite things, actually, that I'm doing right now. I have a few upcoming classes and
Cool.
lots of free stuff and some very inexpensive things in the shop, $3 or $4, $7 for an energy pull or a few clearings or whatever. Anyway,
And
check
you
it out.
have a podcast too, right?
I do. I have a podcast called Left Turn Podcast, and it's a lot what we're talking about, which is people who knew, oh, I need to go, like you were talking about, I need to go in this direction. No, you shouldn't do that. We want you over here. This is what a woman of your age does.
Mm.
Sorry, I'm going over here. Sorry, you know what? It doesn't really work for me to be a traditional doctor anymore. I think I'll do something with plants or, just whatever it is that people are willing to have the awareness and the courage to take those left turns.
Cool. I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your time with me today and
Thank
everybody
you
else.
so much for inviting and asking me.
And how does it get better? What else is possible? What magical day can we create?
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Take care. See
You
you
too.
soon.
See you soon.
Okay, bye.